Hello and welcome to our channel, MarshStream, your public performance broadcast platform. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. You can also donate to our tip jar and support the arts and artists of MarshStream by clicking the link below in the description. Check out our website, themarsh.org, for all upcoming live performances. Now, enjoy the show.
Good evening and welcome to Solo Arts Heal. I'm Kristin Scheel for The Marsh. Thank you for joining us to kick off Women's History Month with our guest, Dipti Mehta. Solo Arts Heal is a theater of resilience that offers hope and inspiration. Solo Arts Heal programs provide transformative experiences, education, community outreach, and advocacy through stories that celebrate the healing power of the arts. My guest, Dipti Mehta, believes in theater and art as a powerful means for social transformation. She is an Indian-American actress and writer of Honor, Confessions of a Mumbai Courtesan, a coming-of-age story set in the red light districts of Mumbai. She is the writer of Priya and the Lost Girls, a graphic novel that breaks silence around the world of sex trafficking. And she is the author of a recent Al Jazeera op-ed taking on the gender binary of a world defined by pink and blue. Dipti has a doctorate in molecular and cellular biology and has worked as a research scientist in the field of prostate cancer. She was a creative writer for a virtual assistant at a Fortune 500 company. She is also the founder and owner of a boutique skincare company called Dees Apothecary. Honor, Confessions of a Mumbai Courtesan has been described as Memoirs of Geisha meets Slumdog Millionaire. It won Best Solo Show at New York Fringe Festival. It is a piece that operates on many levels, music, dance, and storytelling, to examine facets of intergenerational prostitution. Please join me in welcoming Dipti Mehta, who is zooming in to Solo Arts Heal from the future tomorrow morning in Mumbai.
This is true.
We are so honored to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
A pleasure.
Dipti, by way of introduction, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about where you are, about your city, Mumbai. In your bio, you describe riding a bus across the city, which traveled through many different neighborhoods. And I was hoping that you could give us a little tour, a little bit of that route and how it brought you to the work of your play.
Sure. So I'm in Mumbai, which is mini New York, as we call it here in India. And it's truly mini New York, just a little more crowded than New York and a little bit dirtier maybe. But yeah, so I grew up in Mumbai. And Mumbai is just an amazing, amazing place. Like culturally, it's a spot where everything comes together, kind of like New York also. And talking about the public transport, we have amazing public transport. And the buses that I was talking about are bus number 102 and 105 specifically, the ones that I refer to in my show's research or the reason why the show exists. So basically, I would take these buses, and the buses would go from a very, very affluent neighborhood called Valkeshwar, which is up on a mountain right by the ocean. And then they go all the way through the heart of the city. But as they go through this city, like basically they pass through all sorts of neighborhoods from, like the richest to the poorest, and literally richest to the poorest. So you see these pockets of red light district that these buses also pass through. There are other buses also that, pass through the red light districts, but I'm talking about specifically 102 and 105. And there's an area which it would go through. So if you took a taxi, you could just tell the taxi driver to avoid that lane. But if you took a bus, then you don't have a choice. And then the bus would go to the commercial area of the city where you can buy fabrics, utensils and things like that. And it's like a trading market and everything. So that's the bus I used to take, where I used to, when that, not that often. To be very honest, I didn't have to take that bus that often. But every time I took that bus and it would go through this red light pocket, you'd see these women standing outside, like, dressed very provocatively, wearing like really bright makeup and just standing at the doors. The doors would be just makeshift curtains. And if the curtain kind of like swayed, you would see that there would just be like a tiny little room behind that curtain with a little bed. That's all that would be there. And there would be just rows of these women just standing and trying to lure men for their profession. Yeah.
I've read that most victims of human trafficking are trafficked on public transit. So when you were talking about the bus, I thought, you look outside of the window peering at these different people, but you never know who you might be riding the bus with.
Yeah.
So tonight we're on the bus. We're going to be introduced to some of the characters in Honor, a 16-year-old girl, her mother, a pimp, and a priest. And we'll have the chance to take questions from our Zoom and YouTube audiences. We are also glad that your director, Mark Siglianaro, is here with us as well. One of the most beautiful things about Honor is the way that you have woven these characters and stories into a frame story from the Mahabharata, one of the great Sanskrit epics of ancient India. And I'd love to know if you could tell us a little bit about the frame story and the character of Draupadi and why you chose it.
Yeah, so Draupadi made an appearance relatively late in the journey of the play. When I first wrote it, she didn't exist. And then in 2015, when Mark came on board as a director for Honor, we performed the show, and then we decided to do a major rewrite because we weren't happy with how the show was flowing at that point. It was good, but it wasn't where we wanted it to be. And at that point, I was thinking of just this character that would be kind of like, that was a princess. And her story was running alongside our protagonist's story. And I kind of just wanted to show that a woman's plight is still the same, whether she is a princess or she is a prostitute's daughter. And as I wrote the story and Mark read it, he was like, is there a real princess that this kind of story draws from? Like, what you've written. And at first I was like, no, it's just a figment of my imagination. And then I was like, no, wait a minute. There is actually a real princess from the epic Mahabharata. And then over the next few conversations, I kind of first resisted the idea of incorporating her story because she does have religious connotations. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to take on the responsibility of portraying her character alongside, a character that lives in the brothel. And I didn't know how it would be received. But basically why I have Draupadi is because Draupadi was, she had asked for a blessing to be married to a perfect man who had all the virtues. And that wasn't possible to find in one man. So her blessing also became kind of a curse where she was to then marry 5 kings. So she is married to 5 kings. And to make sure that she can actually please them, she was given another boon that she would become a virgin after every time she would have intercourse. So, and then if you go through her journey of life, she goes through so much of objectification and so much of ridicule. She is disrobed in a court full of kings, and nobody comes to rescue her except Lord Krishna, who, and then the battle happens because of that, because she has been insulted in a court full of kings and queens and everybody's there. So I thought it was very interesting to have Draupadi's story be told and to realize that women back in the day were being objectified, and whether they had power or not didn't matter, because Draupadi was a very, very powerful woman. She was born out of fire, so she was a mythical character in that sense too. And she was gorgeous, and she was really confident woman, very strong, very powerful, married to the 5 strongest kings, and still had to go through the objectification that her husbands couldn't rescue her from. And it's the same thing that continues in every woman's life in some way or the other. So I feel like Draupadi is alive in all of us. And that's kind of what we wanted to do with the storytelling. So we have her character come in, and her story is always being told by a storytelling dance and narrations. So we can probably show the clip and the audience can see.
That sounds great. You can introduce the first clip. That would be wonderful.
So the first clip that you're going to see has Draupadi's story being told. It's the beginning of Draupadi's story. And then you also see our protagonist, Rani, doing a little dance that's a part of her training to become a courtesan. So let's just watch it.
Once upon a time, there was a king who wanted revenge on his enemy. So he prayed day and night in front of the fire for a son who would avenge him. He was blessed with a son, but also got a daughter, who was named Draupadi. The king never asked for her, but here she was, born out of vengeance, anger, and fire of youth in her. Draupadi was the most beautiful woman in the universe. She was blessed with the aroma of lotuses that could be smelled from miles away. Little did she know that her life was to be full of insults and tragedies. She was oblivious to the boon she had been given, the boon that was to be her curse, a curse that bound her to many kings.
Yes, darling mother, I'm practicing, Baba.
तुम तो निश दिन खाब में आए मोहे तुम तो निश दिन खाब में आए मोहे गड़बा लगाए तुम तो निश दिन खाब में आए मोहे तुम तो निश दिन खाब में
Want to see me dancing? साले कुत्ते कमीने भड़वे सुअर की जात रान के जने हरामी मादरचोद मदरफकर. Want to see me dancing? Hello, who the fuck are you? And how the fuck did you get in here? You know what? Don't bother answering that question. That idiot Sham must have been smoking his weed and didn't even see you coming in here. China. China! You are that foreigner! How exciting! So brave you are. Brave, no? We don't have people like you coming here. We have men who come here to... What do you think? They come here to get their brains turned on. Brains that live down there between their legs. Sabke sab chutke maar. Chayla, you don't know the curse words? Never mind. I will teach you. Swearing in Mumbai 101. Ready? Harami is a bastard. Fucker is a chutia. I will teach you how to say it. Like you pucker your lips like you're about to kiss somebody. Like this. Choo. Then a big smile. T. Yeah. Choo. T. Yeah. Choo. Yeah. You need practice. What? Practice makes perfect? No. Okay, next one. Mother chod, motherfucker. Pain chod, sister fucker. Ran is a whore. Halkat is a low caste person. Chudail is a witch. And Chaila is a... I can't literally translate Chaila. See, it sounds very good when you say it in Hindi like Chaila. 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 In English, it's like saying to your mother, but it does not sound so good. Like, to your mother. To your mother. To your mother. But amazing now. Everything is amazing on Fuck Lane. You don't know Fuck Lane? Your Lonely Planet doesn't show it as a tourist attraction or what? It used to be called Folk Lane. Then it became a place to fuck. So it became Fuck Lane. You're standing on it. Mother said not to talk to me.
That was great. I think we need to tell a little bit about the overview of the story and what place, what's happening here. What's next for Rainey, our character? What's in store for her?
So basically, Rani has just come of age. She is the daughter of Chameli. Chameli is a woman who's a prostitute. We haven't met her yet at this point in the story, but we will shortly. And Rani is just turned 16, which means that her mother needs to make a few choices for her. And her mother has decided that she's going to make sure that her daughter doesn't become like a roadside prostitute, but that she has a little bit of an edge, and that she becomes a courtesan, which is kind of a lost culture almost. So she's training her on how to please men, and she's also making sure that she can secure her future within the boundaries that she has to face from the society, because society is never going to accept her or her daughter into the normal, diaspora or so. So she is now preparing her daughter to become one of the best prostitutes or courtesans in the industry, in her, in the little pocket of Mumbai's red light district. So at the top of the show, what we are seeing is Rani has just met this American journalist who's decided to kind of do a piece on the red light district of Mumbai, and she's made an arrangement to stay with Chameli for a few days so she can, observe what happens in these areas of the world. And so Rani has just encountered her for the first time, and she's being herself. She's also kind of trying to impress her a little bit, trying to make fun of her a little bit, just like a teenager would do. So that's what we just witnessed. The next clip, what we see, we meet a different character. We meet a guy named Sham. Sham is a pimp in making. His father was a pimp, and his father is the one who basically broke Rani's mother into the business. And then Chameli, being a smart woman, has taken care of Sham all his life, sorry. And so now he's also getting older, and he's ready to become a pimp. And so his job is going to be protect Rani. But what Chameli has done is made sure that Sham becomes a part of the family. So he's not a pimp that would then be abusing Rani, but he would be kind of like a brother who is protecting Rani and at the same time serving as her pimp. So that's the next clip, and we can probably walk the audience, have the audience view that clip now.
I'm looking at the American. See how American watching us like we are on TV. You American people, you have too much time and too much money. But what I don't understand is why you come here to fuck lane. If you have the money, go see Taj Mahal. You bored in life, looking for dirt excite you. You got no prostitutes in your America or what? Dirt is everywhere, in India and in America. You are the same. You want big car, big house, imported cigarette, lot of money. Trust me, it is okay. You want to become famous? Yeah, I want to become famous too. If there was an award for world's best film, I would want to become famous by winning that too. That is the problem with you American people. You think you are Mahatma Gandhi. Chodo dong Raposla. I say stop pretending. We are not Mahatma Gandhi. We are small people with big dreams. My big dream is to become super rich, and it is going to come true as soon as that idiot Pandit Rama gives a date for Rani's first sale. Why don't you come with me? I will take you to the best house in entire Park Lane. The girl over there, hot, young, item, her name Rani. She dances like an apsara, like a fairy. She make you forget everything. She make you forget goddesses. Come.
Wow, this pimp he's the villain, and also prosecuting the customers, the sex tourists.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I wanted to also do with this piece is not to really get judgmental about people, but present the layers of their humanity, right? So he is a pimp, but as you listen to him, he also has a lot of wisdom, and he is just like any other human, has like lots of layers. But when you first encounter these people, you kind of feel like, oh, they're so different from me. Like I would never be like them. And then as you go through the play, you start to find those common threads that tie us as human beings. And you start to see that underneath all of this, it's the same exact desires and wants that we have. So Shyam also is basically going through his truth, but this is relatively early in the show. And so you see the pimp side of him, the one who wants to, basically get rich because he thinks that his solutions or his life will be sorted if he had the money. Yeah. So speaking of the next clip that we're going to watch is the clip where how I was talking about Chameli is trying to teach and train her daughter basically to become a courtesan. So it's a little segment that showcases the mother-daughter dynamic, and while she's training her on how to be a courtesan, the dynamic is still kind of similar to what you would see in any household between a mother and a daughter, like the banter that they have and just the little moments that they share with each other are very much like any other mother-daughter duo. So perhaps we can watch that clip next.
Beta Rani, you are not going to be like other girls on Fuck Lane, cheap type, sasti jaat, who will come to them when they are standing there with their ugly lipstick, blouse with everything showing and constantly lifting their skirts up. She. Beta, men are not just looking for what you young girls call it, pussy. What they are really looking for is the cat. Laugh all you want, but it is true. It is the mewing and the purring that men are most interested in. See, men want to feel like kings, and only a queen can make them feel like that.
Is that why you name me Rani? Because Rani means queen, but I have to be a queen to many kings in one life.
Arey beta, there is no harm in letting a man feel like king for a few minutes. Stop all this crazy talk. Tell me, have you been practicing everything I teach you? Show me how you walk. Oh, beta. People will say, Chameli, don't teach anything to her daughter. Beta, walk like a woman. Push your hips like this. Make a straight line and put your feet on that line. Show. Very good, beta. Men will die on every step you make. Okay, show me how you look at a man at different time. Very good. You still need practice, but good. Okay, say something. Use Lucknowi Hindi or Urdu like I teach you. Remember, it is all in the voice and the words you use. Say something.
ये शाम, ये शराब और ये शबाब, नाचीज की आंखें आपके दीदार को तरस गई, इन निगाहों को बस आप ही का इंतजार था. हो गया? I don't want to do all this. It's too tiring.
Arey beta, you only do this in the beginning. Once man in your pocket, then you empty his pocket. Never mind. I will go make you your favorite food. I make you carrot halwa and I make you palak paneer. You too thin. You need to make a nice body. Put some flesh on those hips, And what you young girls call it these days, junk in the trunk.
I find that a painful scene in theory, but you've made it so light and lively. The exchange between the mother and the daughter.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, it is about, she's teaching what she knows best. This is all she can offer her daughter by the way of what she knows and by the way of what the society will let her do. She's one of those smart women who was trafficked and realized that this was her destiny. And then once she had a child, she was just preparing to give her a better life than what she had. So rather than fighting what she's going through, she accepts it and starts to prepare for what the future would bring for her daughter. And so keeping that in mind, like, she does love her daughter. You can see that through the scene as well, you know? So yeah, in some ways it's very painful to watch a mother training her daughter to become a prostitute. But what I wanted to do was to make sure that people still get this just mother-daughter dynamic is still the same. And it's just a mother wanting the best for her daughter, you know?
So we're going to get to know more about the mother in the next piece.
Yeah, we do get to know more about the next piece. In fact, we'll talk about it more after. Perhaps we can just watch the clip, because you will get to know her story in the next clip.
What I am doing here? I am telling you not to be around when customer coming. They asking me 1,000 question about you. What? 5,000 rupees. My shoe will also not talk for 5,000 rupees. Not even for 10,000. I am busy. 15,000. And I take that ring on your finger, pure gold. You want to hear a story of my life? My father sell me to a pimp when I am 13 years old. He bring me to Bombay and he say I has to stay with his friend for a few nights while he taking care of some business. Little did I know I was the business and he had already taken care of. They left me in a room for 3 days without food or water. Then I am showcased to 12 men. I am shaking, crying, begging. I am not having the strength to fighting them. 5 of them taking turn on me while my mouth is tied with a dirty handkerchief. Sewer. They are not men. They are monsters. I am bleeding and they are getting turned on by half-dead child screams. Start looking like someone died. That was a long time ago. They never come back for me. My family. My mother writing to me one time a letter saying I was the sacrifice they making for younger children and that I should forget them and I should never even think of returning because it bringing shame to the family if I am seen in the village. My family is Rani and Sham now.
We learned that Rani is the product of rape in the mother story.
Yeah.
There's a lot in that story and in that scene, and it goes on. That is a very challenging and complicated character. Fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and this is, unfortunately, in this piece, it is just a hypothetical story. But in reality, so many women do go through this.
Mm-hmm.
I know of a nonprofit organization that is actually supporting girls that are born in brothels. And they have 20 or 25 girls that live with them in a small little apartment. And they're beautiful, talented children. And, you know, their mothers have gone through this complicated reality. So
we're going to meet another character in the next scene.
In the next scene, we meet the priest. So again, keeping in mind that these people, they also live their lives like we do. It's not that they're sitting there mourning their lives every day, every night. They plan. They want to prepare for their future, and they want to do everything in a way that will work. So in India, culturally, people want to do things at a good time, an auspicious time. And the way these times are calculated is by looking at the positioning of the stars and the birth charts of the people involved in those ceremonies and stuff. So as we see the scene, we'll realize we're going to meet a priest who's basically come to meet Chameli so that they can pick an auspicious time for Rani's fitting, or Rani's sale, sorry.
I come here to fuck the lane, but it is no good that you call me here. I am a God's man. People are thinking poorly of me if they are seeing me here in the fuck lane. Pandit ji, here is 1001 rupees. Little welcome for your trouble. 1001 rupees. Very little welcome. Chameli Amma, you liking God, but God not liking you. If you want God to like you, you must make more prayer. I am bringing more. This is just for the welcome. You don't worry. I know worry. Why I worry? I come here because I am a God's man. Because I thinking all the people equal in God's eyes. Hey, but I am a little better because I am a priest, Pandit, Brahman, Arya Brahman at that. My name, Pandit Ram Murthy Subramanyam Murthy Appar Nagarajan. But otherwise, all the people equal in God's eyes. But you are a woman, not a man. So you must pray a lot more to get a closer to God. But otherwise, all the people equal in God's eyes. But you not living a good life. So you must pray a lot more to get a blessing from the God. But otherwise, all the people equal in God's eyes. Okay, where is Rani? Bring her, we will bless her. Rani, she go out to the market with her friend, but I am bringing you her birth chart. Rani's birth chart. Her stars are not looking good, Chameli Amma. I do a puja for her. It costing you 5,000 rupees. And Saturday is the most auspicious day for her first day. After that, nothing good for 8 months. Chameli Amma, you should come to the temple sometime to meet God. When you come, don't come from the front gate, you come from the back gate. And if you want a good life for your Rani, bring her to the temple, offer her to the gods. I will make a pious woman out of her in the name of the gods. Pandit ji, here is 5,000 rupees for the puja, and here is some more for you. Sham will show you out. Chameli Amma, don't get angry. I am only thinking for the future of Rani. Hey, you can bring her to me after her first sale. I will still bless her with my manhood, with the priesthood. Okay, huh? Okay, bye. Sala chutya. Want Rani give money? Sham.
Wow, there's so many transactions amongst this family and extended family, and these quasi parasitic religious figures coming into the home and then taking more.
Taking advantage in every possible way.
Excuse me?
They're taking advantage in every possible way, monetarily, plus, you know, in any other way, because they know they have power.
What are the other characters that we're not going to get to meet tonight? You have about 7, I believe, in
total. So we met 5 of them. We met Rani, Chameli, Sham, we met Draupadi, and we met the priest. We have not met a very interesting character who's a eunuch. Her name is Meena, and she is kind of like this, you know, she's a friend to Rani, she's a confidant to the family. And you see a lot of eunuchs in red light districts who are like that. They serve as nannies because most women cannot trust men in those neighborhoods, or other women either. But eunuchs are pretty well trusted in this small community. It's very interesting because when I met one of the girls, one of the daughters of a prostitute, she was like, and she'd come see the play, and she said, for me, my nanny was one of the eunuchs. And so she really related to that character. And then you haven't met the customer, this old portly man, his name is Lal, who ultimately bids for Rani and gets her for her first sale, buys her virginity.
This might be a time to bring in Mark to talk about putting this play together and how it was received, and where it's been in the past.
Hi.
Hi there.
Well, the play and the play was, when I first read it, was a very different play. Dipti had already had a run in New York with it, at La Mama, right?
Yes.
And we met through a mutual friend for another solo show that I'd worked on. And we talked about the play. We had a really big conversation the first time we spoke about the play. And what was great is at the end of the conversation, I was like, you know, because we had a performance coming up. And Dipti said, we talked about a lot of ideas, a lot of growth ideas for the play and all that stuff. And Dipti said, well, I'm not going to rewrite it for this performance. You know, we'll do that moving forward, right? But within like a couple of days, I had a brand new script. She went crazy with it. It was in the best way, right? I don't know, feeling re-energized, engaging with the material. And over the course of our working relationship, which has been many years now, we see this play as like a living document. We see the performance as a living document. So as we've been all over the place with it, and as we workshop different elements of it, and we find things that really work, we find things that need to be adjusted, we find things that need to get cut. There was a whole American character in there initially that's not in there anymore. Meena was yes, a living document. And we and as Dipti described, you know, even big conversations about adding Draupadi to it, you know, we were just doing our best to tell the story the best way possible. I mean, I'm not.
Tell me about introducing this story to the girls, Dipti. Did you show it and invite them, or how did that work? And tell me a little bit about the relationship that you started with the organizations that helped them as well.
There's only one of them who's been able to see the show because the organization is in Mumbai and we've not yet performed in Mumbai. But some of the girls from this organization were studying in the US at the time. So I was able to do a panel discussion with one of them on the panel. And that's when she came to see the play because she was studying in Staten Island, performing in New York. So it was, you know, it worked out. But otherwise, unfortunately, the other girls have not seen the show. I would so love for them to see the show. But when Sandhya saw the show, after the show, she was like, when I walked in, I thought I was walking into the neighborhood I grew up in. So when she was walking into the auditorium and she saw the set, she really reminded her of the neighborhood she grew up in. And, she was like, this is my life that you put up on the stage. We also had another founder of another nonprofit organization who works in the same area. And when she came, she said, like, I'm hearing the lines that you say are things that I hear women in these areas say to me on an ongoing basis, There's a line that Rani says at one point about dreams, which she said, I've heard this line being told to me verbatim. So it's been received really well. And the thing about that is also, I've had other women who have had either been trafficked and they have written to me afterwards, or they've later on like talked to me. And they said that when they see the show, they find that they have got a voice, but they find something that heals them. It's been healing to watch the show for them. And that to me is the biggest compliment for the show. So that's been the experience of some of the people. We also, when we were in Canada performing, we had some sex workers who saw the show. And for them, the experience was very different. Because for them, it was like, we feel very empowered with what we do. We have health insurance, we have all these things. And I said, that is what is needed in India too, and in many other parts of the world. But unfortunately, that's not something that conversation hasn't even started in many places. So the only support that they would get is through nonprofits or something like that. But it's not like they're considered normal citizens and have, regular kind of lives with regular benefits and stuff. So we've had a great response from that.
Obviously this is not a Mumbai problem, it's a universal problem. And the story that you're telling is of a community that's visible. It's visible from the bus. And so many other sex trafficking victims are invisible. And then as you were just talking about the healing that that being part of the show, being invited to the show, being invited to the conversation is giving, is in contrast when I think about all of the testimony that has been re-traumatizing girls in the stories that we hear. Just recently, this gymnastics coach that was in the news and who died by suicide after his conviction. We hear that the people that the news asks for quotes are there. These girls are you can hear their tremor in their voice. They're seeking that kind of healing. Yeah. Have you ever worked with these girls? And we have a question from Gail about Gail Shickley, who would like to know if you're still friends with the women that you met when you were writing this, and if any of them are interested in performing or doing this kind of work.
I met them after I had written the piece, and once I had already started performing the piece. So in the beginning, it was just me writing with the idea of just performing something as an actor, right? And then it started to grow, and then Mark and I started to work on it a lot more. And then we started touring. And as we were starting to get a little bit more exposure and visibility, nonprofit organizations started to, we started to get collaboration opportunities and things like that. So I met most of these girls afterwards. And I'm still in touch with them. In fact, I was just messaging with them this morning. I visited them, and there were about 15 of them still at the shelter. The rest were like either pursuing some studies in Europe or something or the other. But it's so nice to be with them. They're so loving, and we have a great relationship. So I'm still in touch with them.
Well, this play has given you such a powerful platform to advocate for women's rights and speak on these issues. You were commissioned to write the text for a graphic novel, Priya and the Lost Girls. This is a third chapter in a series, so I imagine there were other authors. And maybe you could talk a little bit about the book that you chose to write, and we have a few slides to share from it, and this character, Priyas.
Yeah, so Priya is a superhero, and Priya Shakti is a series that Ram Devaneni created. And I wrote Priya and the Lost Girls, which is the third chapter. So Ram had come to see Honor, and after he saw the show, about a year later, he reached out to me saying he was, preparing to write the third chapter of Priya Shakti. Priya Shakti started in 2000, like he started working on it in 2012 after the Delhi rape case happened, which was the gang rape that happened in the bus, and the girl died of it. And so in response to that, he wanted to write something, he wanted to create something rather, something creative. So he wrote Priya, like he had a writer write Priya Shakti, and he created that. And Priya is a victim of gang rape, but instead of committing suicide or just, like shutting herself in a room or something, she becomes a superhero. She becomes an advocate. The second chapter is about her advocating for women who are victims of acid attack. And third chapter, after seeing my play, he wanted to work on something that was about sex trafficking. So he had the idea that Priya and Sahas are the two prime characters, and that Priya rescues trafficked victims. And one of the trafficked victims is her sister. And so what we then came up with is the storyline and everything. So I created this mythical worlds, because one of the things I did not want to do was villainize people. So I wanted to take off that, onus of putting it on a human and put it as like a collective. So all the evil things or the negative character traits that we see, we put it in a monster, and we made it into a lava monster. It's a comic after all, and we were going, to reach younger audiences. So we wanted to make it entertaining in some ways too, and more fun to watch. So we created like mythical characters like half snake, half humans, the lava monster, and of course Sahas is there. So the roaring tiger is always exciting to watch. And we placed it in a city called Rahu, which is an underground city where men go to, buy sex. And if you look at the images, I know we've been like popping them on, but one of the images, which is off the city, Rahu, is totally inspired from the red light district, these pockets that we were talking about initially that exist in South Mumbai even now. So if you look at that particular slide, which I believe is the second image, where you see these women standing and men just walking around, and there's like clothes hanging and everything. That's inspired.
Can we take a look at that again? Is it possible to pop that up? Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at the top, it's like walking around, standing next to the big shift doors, and there's clothes and everything, and men are just, walking around. So if you look at the small image on the right, like the second one on the right side, you see a man just, shopping for women, and women are just standing next to each other. So it's inspired from the actual red light districts of Sonagachi or in South Mumbai. And then you see another image where you see the tiger is like jumping into Priya's heart. So basically Priya is a superhero and her tiger is her pal, but it's also kind of symbolic way of showing her courage, that she has a tiger's heart. So, that's what kind of it portrays. And in the end of the novel, it's a free download, so anybody can download it, and there's augmented reality and all sorts of interesting things in there. In the end of the novel, as we were finishing the book, we didn't want to just end it with a happy ending, because really that happy ending is not achieved for majority of victims. But we wanted to talk about the real issue, which is the stigma. So even if there was a happy ending, is there really a happy ending? That's a question that I wanted to talk about in the book. And we wanted to end it with what really is happening. The stigma that these girls do go through, even if they do come out from what lands up happening. And this happens in the US too. Like I remember talking to a social worker in Arizona, and she said that there's a lot of like trafficking that happens across borders. And these women, if they do tell on their pimps, what lands up happening is the pimps walk out. They don't really get, any penalties or anything, because they have these settlements, right? And or ties with within the system. But the women now don't have any way to work, and they are now being blacklisted in that community of sex workers too. So they really have nowhere to then go. So they land up either not saying anything or going back to the pimps and suffering more abuse. So it's just a very tricky situation to work with these women. So that's where we kind of end the comic book, where like Priya is just like, what are we supposed to do? And so they walk away.
Well, I love the end of the comic book, especially you write that you have a crowd of people and they're saying, we await a world where we won't have to protect girls because the world is safe for them. So it's just a beautiful way to end, I thought. And
Yeah,
I go back to what you were talking about the trafficking across the border, and the social worker that you talked to. I listened to an interview with a child psychologist who was talking about how difficult it is to identify trafficking victims, and then also that they don't identify as victims. Usually they would, and they don't identify their trafficker as a trafficker. You know, this is my boyfriend and he's helping me. So it's something you have to be trained to recognize and to interrupt.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of awareness that people are trying to raise. Like, you know, there are resources that people can actually go through and see how they can spot. Hotel staffs go through these trainings. And I think it's happening more and more now. I do remember just recently, maybe a couple of years ago, recent to me is, you know, with COVID, everything's timeline has been warped. But there was a case where a hotel staff reported young girls were in the room and, you know, they were never coming out, but the room service was going in and everything. And they reported them and landed up that these girls were being trafficked. When I was performing in Vancouver, I remember just talking to a shopkeeper and she was telling me that she knew somebody whose daughter was being trafficked to California, but the hotel staff reported, and then that's how she was rescued. She was 13. And so, you know, if there are small things they say that you can recognize, if the clothing seems like a misfit, if the shoes seem like they're too big or too small, if the child is just not talking, you know, children are never just too quiet or too, like, you know, you'll see, or the haircut seems off, you know, seems like the hair has been cut by someone randomly at home or something. Or
phones. I heard multiple phones was a sign that you'd be given a phone by your pimp, or you've had another kind of phone for your foster home or whatever. Yeah. We were talking about statistics earlier because it seems there's so many contradicting numbers and they're very poorly reported. There's a UN trafficking report that came out in 2020, and it's full of information and definitely worth taking a look at. But there's so many things that stand out. You know, 1 in 7 runaways is a victim of sex trafficking. 99% are women and girls. I mean, these numbers jumping out, but you can never kind of pinpoint it, and it's not convincing. And I read someone. People who exploit children and women have only benefited from being underestimated. So the numbers really don't matter.
And even when numbers like that, they're obviously hugely, you know, they're not anywhere near the actual numbers. But even then, if you think about 25 million, you know, people being trafficked. Now this includes forced labor and all sorts of stuff. Roughly, they think 5 million people are trafficked for, you know, are sex trafficking victims. The other day, I was just talking to one of my neighbors. There used to be a lady who used to be underneath our building selling flowers. And when I was growing up, she would always be pregnant. Every year, she would be having a child. And she had about 10 or 12 children. And they would all be running around and stuff like that. And I was just talking to this old neighbor of mine. And I said, I saw the lady, but what happened to her children? Like, she's alone and she's so old and stuff. And the neighbor said, well, she had so many girls and boys. The boys are not willing to take care of her and the girls are disappeared. And I was like, they disappeared. And that to me was such a scary thing. And we live in a good neighborhood, but we're surrounded by these pockets. So, I mean, these girls live on the streets. So they're easy victims. Poverty, they're super poor. And so any little bit of allure would take them away. So these numbers, again, missing children don't get reported as trafficking victims, but how many of these missing children have been trafficked or have been kidnapped, we don't know. So I think the numbers are not representing the reality at all. And even then, it is such a massive number.
Right.
It's like $50 billion industry in all. And that is just...
There's a lot of money to be made, and that is terrifying driver of it all.
And everybody's, the system is corrupt, so it's hard to break the system because who do you go to? There was another case where this woman, she talked about her story. I believe we were on an interview for Al Jazeera together, and she talked about how she had met a woman who gave her phone number saying if she ever needed help to reach out because she was in a brothel. And she runs out of the brothel, somehow manages to get out, and she calls this woman. The woman calls the pimp back. And now she's in another brothel, and she managed to get out of there somehow. She goes to the cops, she gets no help. For days or weeks, she was without shelter, without food, everything, just hiding and running from the traffickers, and somehow then managed to get out of all of that. But it's very difficult for these women to even get out because the system is so broken. Everybody's in on it. They don't know who to trust.
You mentioned Al Jazeera, and you wrote an op-ed recently. And we have to wrap up, but I'd love to know, this obviously came out of the attention that you've brought to these issues. But just briefly, your thesis in that article will be nice to share.
It really just comes from, growing up in a patriarchal culture. I grew up in India, in a very, very orthodox patriarchal community. And on one side, there's so much love and affection, and we're protected so much, right? But on the other side, there's so much suppression, and it is all about serving men and how you're going to be a good daughter-in-law and a good wife and a good sister-in-law, but your own identity was not to be there. And that's what I heard growing up, that a woman is a mother and a wife, and that's her identity. And that was a problem for me. So when I wrote this piece, I just wanted to create the world that I would want for my daughter, for myself too. And in the thing is, it's so complicated, right? Because there is so much love. So you're still attached to your family and you sacrifice. You think it's okay because the love is there, the family is there, the values and the culture and everything. And it's so beautiful. But on the other side, like, you are killing yourself slowly. And even though someone like me who basically threw tantrums about it and, but just was a rebel and came out of the system. But I think I too sometimes think like a woman who was raised by patriarchs. Like, I will not want my brother to get up and do something for me. I'll be like, no, you sit, I'll do this. It's just so ingrained. So I was, in the article, I talk about a world that I don't think I can even imagine, because I too am a victim of patriarchy. It's just an invisible fabric that I got woven into, But hopefully my daughter gets to experience a different world where there is no blue and pink, but there's rainbows and there's all sorts of shades of colors, and every color has a sky of their own. It doesn't have to be that a pink has to be sheltered by a blue. Why? So that's a question at the heart of the piece. And I just wanted to write it in a lighter way, but I guess anything I do becomes a little dark.
Well, I think that's a beautiful place to end. I want to thank you so much for bringing your story. I hope to see this play at the Marsh sometime, start to finish. It's an amazing play, and your characters are fantastic. I want to thank Mark for joining us too. And sorry, we didn't get to talk more about the process of directing this wonderful play.